Welcome to Building Toronto's Skyline, a podcast exploring the current state of Toronto's condominium industry from a unique construction perspective through engaging and entertaining podcast interviews with the many stakeholders in the industry. This podcast is brought to you by Fusion Corp, a construction management company. Here's the founder and CEO of Fusion Corp Developments, Inc., and author of Building Toronto's Skyline, the host of this podcast, Nick Ainis.
Well, congratulations, Mike. You finally got the pronunciation perfect this time.
I am sweating bullets and grateful that third time was a charm.
I'll make sure to mention this on Humble and Fred.
Please do, because last time you criticized my lack of P in Fusion Corp.
I did it live on the air too, so it was fun. So we have a great, another great guest here at Building Toronto Skyline. We're episode 3, and we have Julian McNabb from Melbourne Property Management. I met this guy on a new project, and I said, holy geez, this guy knows too much. He knows more than I do. So I immediately asked him for lunch and discovered that we knew each other from our history and working in our careers.
Correct.
And it was an exciting thing. And we're working on a project together now.
We are. Yeah. Very exciting.
Yeah, excellent. And we ate some amazing lamb ribs together, too.
We did. They had lamb ribs. We were sold.
Who paid for that meal?
I think I did.
Good. I'm glad
That's the only way I can get him on the show.
He invited me for lunch, so.
Well, listen, I think when you, when you're working in the industry and you're working with colleagues, and there's so many different people out there in the industry, you really want to work with people that are very knowledgeable. And I immediately discovered that about you, that you knew everything that we were talking about here, especially when we're trying to get this condo development going, and we're going out to market soon on 60 on Broadway. And you did just demonstrating that your knowledge of the condo industry, and you helped us along with some of the vendors that we should be selecting for metering, and talked about the pros and cons of the different companies. And even though we know quite a few of the metering companies out there, you really helped us iron it out, and it was great, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, and certainly with the EV parking component as well, that adds new layers of complexity that a lot of builders and developers are now faced with.
Yes, and we're doing some EV, and it starts off with rough-in only. Most of the developers started off with that, but I think we're taking it to the next level now. So let me just talk. So we know each other now. Now you're never going to forget me, of course, and I won't forget you. And if I can, I'm going to get Melbourne on every project if I can. So tell us a little bit about you, your story, and you're from Australia. Obviously, we can tell from your accent.
Yeah, I'm from Melbourne, Australia.
Yes, from down under.
Yes.
G'day, mate.
That's it.
And so AC/DC, oi, right? Sushi, the newbies, Sushi Mango now too, right?
Yeah, I keep hearing about it. It's funny with the advent of technology, and obviously we're doing this podcast today and being able to reach people and provide information in different ways. It's amazing. I'll be in a meeting. Have you heard of this comedian? Have you heard of this, new YouTuber, TikTok? It's amazing how the information is disseminated. And
yes, it's very readily available. And have you seen Sushi Mango?
Yeah.
So they're funny as hell, yeah. And they have they bring out the construction concrete trucks, and it's kind of funny there too, because they also rip everybody off in the show as well. So.
Oh yeah, in true Aussie fashion.
Yes. But yes, please tell us a little bit about how you're from Australia, you were from Melbourne, and tell us a little about how you got to Canada, and a little bit of how you got in the condo industry, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so it's an interesting story. So I've been in Canada for almost 25 years. I bought a one-way ticket in the middle of university. Wasn't sure if I wanted to finish my media studies and politics degree, so I thought I'd travel for a little bit. I traveled. I ended up serving my now wife at the keg at Bloor and West Mall. On my travels, I was planning on going to Whistler and going out west like a lot of Aussies do. Yep. And she said, "That's great, but I won't be here when you get there, when you get back." And it was kind of a cake and eat it too moment.
Oh, wow.
I actually understand this now. So we decided to go to Whistler together, and we ended up buying a condo together, and I ended up putting my hand up in a meeting to be on the condo board. And this was, fast forward sort of almost 20 years ago. Put my hand up and got elected to the condo board, and then the executive vice president of the management company that was managing our condo said, look, I think you'd be a really good industry advocate from a board member standpoint. Like, give us some perspective of what it's like to live in a condo, and what are the things you're looking for as a board member, as an owner, as a resident of a condominium. So I joined the Canadian Condominium Institute, CCI, the Toronto chapter. They're actually having their 35th anniversary next Thursday. They're having a big gala to celebrate that. So I was on that board for about 5-6 years, and bringing an owner's perspective. And then during that time, we sort of started the global financial crisis, the GFC as they call it in Australia. And I could realize the industry that I was in, and I took a few interesting paths getting into condo. As I mentioned, my degree is in media studies and politics. I did work at 1010 Radio for a while on the Ted Wallison show. That was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, and
you sound like people there. You have a great radio voice. What can I say?
Unfortunately, with the accent, on air was not a possibility, but I explored that. And
you should be. I would have hired you right away there too.
And I kept moving forward, and then I took another step after the radio. And during the downturn, we could see the early signs of the recession. I thought it might be a good idea. I saw all the cranes in the sky. Right. I'd met with a few managers that were taking care of our building, and I sort of thought, you know what, I could do this, and I think the industry is missing something. My perception at the time was not enough managers were living in the communities they were taking care of. There were too many do-nots and not enough please refrain froms. So I got into the management side of things, and then moved over. Well, after managing for a couple of years, getting that experience, I sort of thought, I think I can do a little bit more. So I approached the company I was working for and said, look, I think I have more to offer. And then they said, well, maybe you might want to be interested in the development side and helping our developer clients with their vision, with the promises that they're making, to make sure that operationally it makes sense.
Yes.
And so that's where it starts. And to your point on a project and using knowledgeable consultants, you can't fast track experience. So,
no, you can't.
And it's I think I calculated last year we hit over 1,000 condominiums that we'd worked on. Just, you do about 50 to 100 every year. It's pretty easy to get to that 1,000 number pretty quickly.
Of course.
And you just learn so much from each project that you didn't know about, or here's something that you wouldn't want a client to go through again, or, oh, this was a really great person to speak to at the city about this particular issue, and sort of showing them the roadmap. So here I am.
Yeah, I agree. I think even as a construction manager, I thought if I did one condo, I knew everything about condos, but it's not the case. You have to do 5 or 6 or 10 or to see all the differences between all the different condos. So you've sort of experienced the wide range of different types and different types of structures and different types of design and and so on and so forth. But now tell us, there's also a little bit more about Melbourne too. You have a partner. Is it Jeff Elliott? Is he?
So yeah, I do have some partners at Melbourne. So I met Joff years ago. He was working in the sub-metering industry, and we got along. Our kids are similar ages. Our wives get along, and we sort of, there was always an opportunity to do some business together. And Joff approached me and said, "Look, I've started this company. Would you like to join? Would you like to be a part of something where you can control the shots, you can control the service?" And it was a pretty great opportunity. I was working for a large publicly traded company. That's where I learned a lot of.
Originally Samara, and that's how we knew each other.
Yep.
And then it turned into First Service.
First Service bought Samara, and then we had an opportunity to provide a more specialized service to our developer clients, where they needed a company that could move quickly. They needed a company where if there was any issues on service delivery, it could immediately be taken care of.
Right.
And that was an opportunity that presented where I could actually achieve those goals. And
so who picked the name? Was it you? You're from Melbourne, but I read in the website that he went to Melbourne as well.
Yeah, he will tell you that that was one of the most magical places he'd ever lived. He backpacked through there, as a lot of Canadians do take some time off and travel. And if it wasn't for the distance from Toronto, where he's the rest of his family's from, he would have stayed. He wouldn't have come back. He enjoyed it that much.
Oh wow, that's great.
And so, and my other partner Matt, he's also been to Australia. Hasn't been down to Melbourne, but he was in the Gold Coast. And again, just Just love the vibe. It's a lot of people who go to Australia, they don't realize, they go there thinking that they're going to look at the Opera House or the Harbour Bridge, but they come back and said the best part of the trip was experiencing how Aussies live their lives. It's about,
how do they live?
So the biggest, a lot of people say, well, what's the biggest difference?
We're segueing, but
We're segueing.
Let's do it.
I'm a segue guy.
Let's do it.
One of the biggest difference, and this is related to the industry that I'm in now, is we don't use the word work a lot. It's like here, people say, what are you doing Thursday after work? In Australia, they'll say, what are you doing Thursday night?
Right.
And it's like, do you want to go out? It's like, I can't, I've got to work. Well, we all have to work. That's just part of the gig, but it's Thursday night. Why don't we go out and have a couple of drinks and, we'll be okay. We'll have some Vegemite in the morning. We'll be right. It works out that way. So what it is the lifestyle. It's not standard of living. It's quality of life.
Yeah, I think you got that right. We tend to focus a lot on work here.
It's
work
to work.
Or
work to live.
Well, I'm part of that crew there.
I think, and my parents will tell me that I've probably switched some of those goals. But anyway, if you can, one of the things I try to do at Melbourne is in part of the culture is if you can educate your staff to say, hey, let's really focus on lifestyle.
Let's go out on Thursday night and get drunk. Is that what you encourage your workers to do?
No, but I encourage them to take holidays, take vacation, spend time with family. Let's work and use the Australian lifestyle as an example. And so when we're taking care of communities, let's take care of them in the same way. Like, let's make sure it's a great place to live.
Well, we do that at Fusion Corp because we all work remotely. So we encourage that for sort of family engagement, but you got to work.
Yep.
And I know if anybody's listening at Fusion Corp today, I know who the good ones are. I know who the bad ones are.
Yeah, and you have to make people also feel supported in an environment where they're no longer in an office.
Yes,
we have a tremendous number of hybrid staff at our office. We have about 30 staff that work out of the office, but they don't all work there at the same time, maybe except for a couple of days a week when we do the group meetings, and these are more of our accounting staff, our administration, and sometimes when they are at home, we do a weekly call to try and unite the team and get everybody together and try and help them through any obstacles they may be facing. Because sometimes when you are working remotely, you can feel a little disconnected
from the company,
as a whole. So we just do our best to try and bring people together, and obviously social events help. Doing a night at the Blue Jays or going out for dinner, or we're having a really big Christmas party next month or a holiday party to celebrate.
I hope I get invited this time around. But Mike, you're not saying anything. You usually like to say something, and you're not saying anything.
I didn't want to pollute the process, but I was thinking his accent would be suitable for Toronto radio. That's what I'm thinking. I'm listening in the headphones. I think that Aussie accent works.
I think it's a little more hybrid now. So I go back to Australia and they're like, oh, you sound totally Canadian. You don't sound Aussie at all. And I'll come here. It's like, oh, no, I definitely see the Aussie. So it's, you
have an accent, but it's not very heavy. It's there. It's evident.
But when you go back to Australia, do you say a lot? Are they like, oh, you're starting to say a?
Yeah, but I don't say a boot.
Well played.
All right. Okay, Mike, you can be quiet now, okay? We like to have these things happening during the show.
Of course.
Okay, so that's great. So Jeff Elliott, he went to Melbourne. It looks like he's a successful businessman. I think he's involved in some other ventures.
Yeah, and it's important to have a well-balanced team. I think, meeting some of your team members at Fusion Corp, everyone has different areas of expertise.
Of course.
So Joff has spent his whole, a majority of his career working with the same developer clients that I'm working with in a non-competing field. Like we sort of work together, or we'd have similar clients that we'd bump into because we're working on the same projects together. And so it was kind of nice having someone who has a lot of business experience with the team. Because they're obviously, when we have close to 100 staff, and so they depend on us operating as a business.
Of course.
So it's really important that we have some business-minded people. Our CEO, CFO, Carlo, he was involved in taking GFL public. Like we need some really important people on our team to strategically help us operate as a business, not just providing communities with the management services they need, but we need to make sure as a company we are responsible and
of course
have those resources available.
So your role at the company, you're vice president of operations, is that right? Did I get that right? Or
no, I'm just I'm the vice president. I sort of.
But you're an owner of the company as well.
I'm an owner of the company. Yes,
chief bottle washer. That's what we call that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually the chief barista officer. I've upgraded from bottle washing, but
that's fantastic.
No, it's
congratulations.
No, it is. It's important to be able to have a say in the service delivery of what's being offer to our clients, and that's very important to our clients. Like a lot of our clients, when they decide to do business with Melbourne, they want to know the people that they're dealing with can make the decisions that need to be made.
Of course. So let's talk property management, because condo property management, because that's why we're here, and we're here to talk about everything condos, and we're talking about building Toronto Skyline, and you've taken a big role in that as well with your experience and expertise. We all need property managers. From what I can see, condo managers are dealing with a lot of day-to-day, probably dealing with suite owners a lot, and it's a difficult job. I've seen a lot of condo managers because I lived in a condo at one point in my life. I was on the board of directors as well, which I enjoyed very much because I was able to bring my expertise, and we had a very good board. It was a very successful board. I think when you have board members that sort of try to work together, that adds to the success of the condo, adds to the success of the building. And but one thing I noticed is that it's not a fun job as a condo manager at the building. You have to deal with a lot of homeowner issues, and you can deal with a lot of different personalities. I'm sure that's challenging for your condo managers. Now, you're in the business of property management, and it's a little bit different from being the person at the condo site. But what would you say about that? Because I think we owe it a lot to these property managers who deal with a lot of BS.
Yeah, it's
bullshit.
It's interesting how much owners don't realize how important the manager is in maintaining the asset that they have a unit in. It is at times a glorified complaints department. There's not a lot of compliments. There are compliments, and I love it when owners will reach out and say, "Hey, your manager here helped me out tremendously. I didn't know where to turn to, and they were an expert, and they really helped us, and I can't thank them enough for that difficult time."
Right.
One of the first thing I'll mention that people don't always realize is that we're operating a business inside people's homes, and it's very different than if this was a commercial building where people are going to work. This is where they live. This is where this is their home, and in many cases, they own their homes. I'll get into the rental versus home ownership later because that adds different layers of complexities.
Yes. Because you manage condo buildings, but you also manage rental buildings for some of your clients.
Correct, and as well as commercial plazas. And so commercial plazas as well, they're still condominiums, and some of them are not condominiums, but they have business owners that need to operate their business. So if the front door is jammed and they can't get in, neither can their customers, neither can their staff.
Right.
They can't operate their business. But going back to the management side of things, I can tell you that none of our managers, when they're driving to work in the morning, deliberately want to make sure that nobody has hot water for their showers. That's not the intent. But and certainly managers are a coordinator of service. Yes. So we're not responsible for making sure that we're physically making sure there's hot water, but our job is to ensure that if we have that there's a maintenance program in place, that we have a mechanical contractor that is making sure that we have hot water, and if the hot water for some reason is not available, our job is to make sure that person comes in and we diagnose the issue and communicate to residents and let them know what's happening. Exactly. So it can be challenging because sometimes residents, they get emotional because it's their home. They get frustrated. They say the easiest way to fix all of the problems in condominiums is to remove the people, the pets, and the parking. You take those three components out of a condominium, and it's fantastic.
Everything's going to run smoothly.
Everything will run smoothly.
No, but I had problems in my condo, and we had leaks. Things happen. And because I'm in the construction industry, I knew exactly what was going on. And it happens. So, for me, it was like, okay, no big deal. Just take care of it. And, as long as they're not negligent about the process, then I was okay. I mean, that's the attitude most condo suite owners should have, unless it's a catastrophe, of course. Well, then we can understand that, I've been on a condo where, and I was an owner's rep. I didn't build it, thank God. But where we had a massive flood from, I guess, the 12th floor, affected so many suites. We had to get the emergency crews out there right away. There was a Royal Bank, there was a kitchen company, there was a spa, and all of them got flooded out. Not just once, like 2 or 3 times. And it was a problem with the plumbing system, and they used some substitute systems for the piping system, and it was and I won't say who was the builder, but you know who you are if you're listening to the show. But it's tough, and those people were really, really, really upset, and I can understand that. And the developer ended up losing his shirt on the project. I won't mention who the developer is either, but yeah, it was. And so some of these things I can understand how suite owners can be very upset at times. Mm-hmm. And the face is the property manager or the condo manager for the most part.
Yeah, and a couple of things what you said there. I recognize as a board you had construction background, but understand that a lot of our board members are volunteers that put their hand up at a meeting that don't have any experience with construction. They don't have any experience with the costs associated with, we'll just go and get that fixed. That's going to be $5,000. Yeah, it's only $5,000. It's $5,000. And they're looking at the money very differently. People have to understand that every single condominium that's ever been built is like a custom home. There's only one of them. I know many of our developer clients, whether they use a third party to construct their vision or whether they self-perform, almost all of them will outsource the plumbing and the electrical, and they're trusting that component of the project to a company. I can guarantee you that company does not want to be creating unnecessary leaks. It's damaging their brand. It's damaging their insurance. It's damaging their cost. There is a shortage of trades. I think everybody's known about that. And even if there's not necessarily a shortage of trades, it's a shortage of the right sort of trades. So you may have you may have 5 plumbers working on the job, but 2 may be the apprentice. And the apprentice, all it takes from my understanding of doing lots and lots of water leaks is that, maybe a screw wasn't tightened correctly, the right fastener wasn't on, and they don't intentionally put the wrong one on. It's just, we just
it happens.
And it's unfortunate, but with the massive amount of construction that's going on, it's going to happen.
And I know, I'm putting up my hand because I know the answer to that. So you take when you have a repair, if it's $5,000, you have a budget. So you have a budget for repairs. You have a budget for things like that come up like that. And if it's an improvement, we usually try to shift some of those costs in the reserve fund. So sometimes it's eligible for a reserve fund expenditure.
Sometimes,
not all the time, but you can play around with that.
Yeah, and I think it's the other thing is a lot of these are happening in new buildings, so a lot of it's covered under warranty, but Tarion does not cover any damage as resulting from a deficiency.
Of course.
So they'll make sure that the pipe is fixed, but if there's a few $1,000s of damage as a result of that leak, that's on the condo to pay for.
And you also have, when you buy your unit, it's in the schedule of finishes. So it's either you basically, if you upgraded everything, you better have home insurance to cover all your upgraded product, because then you only get the standard cost returned to you from the insurance company. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I was actually speaking at an owner's information evening last night for a new project that we're opening up in Oakville, and one of the key points of that meeting is to prepare people for moving into a condominium. So they may not have lived in a condominium before. So one of the things we do stress is make sure that you have the correct insurance. Simple things like your personal belongings, your betterments and improvements.
Yes.
The standard unit schedule that you're speaking of won't cover any appliances. It won't cover hardwood flooring, kitchen countertops. In some cases, it won't cover interior doors. Like a lot of these, you're buying a shell, but you're upgrading it basically through the purchase process, but only you benefit from the finishes inside your suite, so it's not fair to burden the rest of the condominium with those costs.
Exactly.
So you do need to have insurance for that. We also recommend having displacement insurance, so in the unlikely event that there's a fire on your floor and the smoke comes into your unit, so they have to clear out the smoke so you can move back in, then you've got coverage to stay in a hotel or somewhere else for a couple of months. And as you mentioned, deductible insurance. In the unlikely event that there's a claim and you're responsible for the deductible, you can actually insure against that as well. So making sure you're armed with the correct knowledge can help navigate through that system and that process a little bit easier, because a homeowner's deductible to make a claim on, say, $5,000 of damage is very different than the condo, who even now, if you have a $100,000 claim, it probably doesn't make sense to put an insurance claim through, because the increase in premium in future years will be quite significant.
Yeah, that's right. That's we always avoided, when I was on the board, we always avoided sometimes insurance claims because it would just skyrocket eventually.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, listen, that's good. We still have a lot to talk about, by the way. I wasn't going to close the show now. But so I want to go over the life cycle of the property management company or condo management company, because you have the cradle. Is it a good analogy to use cradle to grave?
Yeah, we call it the journey.
Yeah, the journey is better because cradle to grave implies that you're going to get fired at the end, right? So, and I'm sure you never get fired, but sometimes we all do. Yeah. So let's start off with, because you get in early on before you even get to the market, a property manager is involved. Like obviously when you're assembling the condo docs, and you need a budget from a property manager, and also you're reviewing the condo to see the different aspects of the condo, what works, what doesn't work. You're going to say to the developer, "Oh, wait a minute, you did this. You're putting this here. There's going to be a problem for garbage collection or this and that." So tell us a little about that, because you come in early on and it's a consulting role. Yes. And you charge for this. So, yes.
Yep.
And you know what? It's money well spent. I don't think developers realize that, but it's definitely money well spent. So you just got a plug there, buddy. Okay.
So we have some clients that will engage us even during the due diligence process. We're thinking of buying this piece of land. We're thinking of actually putting this sort of a project in. We think this is the kind of density we're looking for. What are your thoughts? What are you seeing? Do you think we can do this here? Is there anything that we haven't seen? Particularly if they're moving into a municipality that they may not have a lot of familiarity with, because obviously through the zoning and the redevelopment process, municipalities take different approaches to, with respect to parking, with respect to EV parking, with respect to density, amenity requirements. So it's all different. So that's how early it is. But typically,
yes, that's true.
Typically, we're involved a couple of months, 2-3 months before the project is going to market. So they're saying, okay, this is what we want to build. This is where it's here. This is our vision. Here are the kind of amenities we want to offer. What are your thoughts? How much do you think it's going to cost to run? And operationally, we have to make sure it makes sense. And the documents that the lawyers and the surveyors are providing, at the end of the day, or the way I sort of put it is, once everyone else in the room is left, we're there. We have to make sure it all works at the end of the day. So in the disclosure statement, certainly the lawyer will tell people what it is that they're buying. Their surveyor will show them what it is that they're buying. But the property manager has to make sure we tell everybody how much it's going to cost and how it's going to work.
Yeah, because I think when you're establishing the budget, all the developers are thinking of is like, give me the lowest maintenance fees that we can get. And that's unrealistic, because you have to make sure that you have all the essential services in place so for the building to function properly. You're only fooling yourself at the end of the day. I mean, obviously there are ways to cut a little bit here, a little bit there, but those budgets are fairly tight anyways. So
yeah, and just
your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the mentality is changing. I would definitely see now that brand and value are becoming the forefront of the conversation. Certainly, if fees are beyond a certain cost, then the project's not viable, and no one, everyone can leave the room. So we understand that we can't say that fees are going to be, it's going to cost you $1.50 a square foot to run this project a month, because you'll have no sales, then you'll have no construction, then you'll have no project.
Exactly.
So our role is to say, well, if you remove the 4 different swimming pools you're contemplating and just put one in, that's going to reduce your cost. So we can come through there. We had a project with a new client where they had several water fountains throughout the project. And this is where our expertise said, look, this particular municipality is going to require water testing, because if a dog comes by and drinks the water out of those ponds and the water's not clean and the dog, unfortunately gets sick, you've got a problem. And this is something that no one had ever thought of, because we unfortunately went through this process, and, you have to go through it and learn from it to bring it on to the next project. So by eliminating a lot of the water fountains, we were able to significantly reduce some of the amenity operating costs, just as an example. But no, I'm finding that a lot of the larger clients are more focused now on repeat buyers. They want to make sure that the experience that their purchaser is enduring can be replicated. If the people are buying as an investment, they want to make sure there is a return on that investment, because if the condominium fees go up 20, 30, 40% at the end of the first year, and all of the brokers that have encouraged their clients to buy in that project and have locked in a 2-year lease and their lease rates are fixed, it's going to look badly. So I'm seeing now people saying, okay, I want to make sure that we have the resources to actually run this project correctly. And at the end of the day, 3 or 4 cents multiplied by the average square foot,
is not much.
We're talking $15 to $20 a month over 12 months. The way I put it is, if your purchasers can't afford an extra $400 a year, maybe they shouldn't be buying in your project. And most go, you know what? Yeah, because usually the pressure in the past was from the sales team to sell quickly, which is not a bad place to be, because you need to get out into the market, you need to get going. But at the same time, it's your brand that they're selling. You need to make sure that you can actually deliver the project. So we don't do budgets that are not realistic, because like you said, you're shooting yourself in the foot. All of a sudden, when it comes to managing the project, we don't have the resources to fulfill the promises that have been made.
There's still some shady developers out there, though, I think. Just say yes.
It's my understanding.
You know what?
Most of our clients that we choose to work with,
they're not so shady.
We're pretty forceful in our approach. Like, we know what we're doing. There's a reason. I always love this. We had a client that was a new client, and they used the best lawyer, the best manager, the best architect, the best surveyor. And at the end of the project, he said, "Guys, I'm really disappointed." I said, "I went out and used all of the best consultants, and nothing went wrong." And the lawyer looked at him dead eyes and said, "You're welcome."
There you go.
So often I find the less experienced, or any of the clients that are looking to save money, will start trying to do more themselves rather than use the services of a professional. And it can get a lot more expensive, because they don't have that expertise. Like you mentioned, the amount of projects that you've worked on and what you've seen in your career.
I've seen a lot of people, not making the right decisions too. So, although we have the best people that we work with are the people that say, "Okay, here, it's your problem, deal with it.
Yeah.
Here's the building, I gave it to you to build it, do it." And we'd solve the problems along the way. We'd come back to the client and say, "Look, this is the best thing we should do. This is my advice." And they usually agree. And then, I think that's important, because the more the developers get involved in micromanaging some of the consultants, negatively, not positively, negatively, that's when sometimes things fall apart.
Yeah, and there's a fine line, because some are passionate and they're really involved, and some you've got to respect that they have this vision and this dream and they want to make it happen, and they do get a little involved. But you've got to also understand that if you're not listening to your consultants, that's when it becomes an issue. Like, I don't think that's a good idea for the following reasons. If you want to go ahead, great, but here's some of the consequences of that action.
Of course.
Here's some of the battles that you're going to be facing.
And sometimes the consultants are wrong. They're not always right. And you have to balance that as an owner. So, I hire people on the owner side as well, as, Fusion Corp does a few partnerships and stuff like that. And, we're involved. I say, no, we can't do that. It's too expensive. Or what about this? And we offer alternative solutions, and we ask questions. But we always listen to our consultants, and you're right. That's the best thing to do.
Yeah.
So now, so basically from there, we don't really see you.
So, yeah.
We don't see you until, let's be honest, I'm going to say the normal course is that we don't see you until occupancy after. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes and no. So typically, like I mentioned, it's anyone can put a budget together, and anyone can put a schedule of monthly fees and a Schedule D to apportion fees. Anyone can do that, but not anyone can bring that knowledge. It's when you say you charge for this service, it's the consulting that people want. It's the opinions, it's the advice. What are you seeing? How does waste management work? You've got this beautiful lobby feature, but you want people to lug their mattresses and their bed frames through that lobby to move in.
Yeah, that's right.
Not going to move in. Or how's this delivery? Or how's waste management going to work? Or how's parcel management going to work with this nice lobby? And here are some integrative solutions that we've seen. And let's roll some technology into the project. Let's, those kind of things is what we're bringing in from a consulting standpoint, not just putting the budget saying this is how much we think it's going to cost. And being involved in the discussion, being a part of the project, as well as when you pay a consultant, they're going to be more engaged. They're going to be, I hate it when I take over a project from another company that did the budget for free just to get the business, but they didn't put that care and that effort in, because quite frankly, they didn't have the time or the resources to do it, because they didn't, by charging a fee, I have a whole team that does this.
Of course.
And one of my team members, it's funny, he was saying, for what we charge, he says, I used to work for a developer. We'd pay 5 times to that for an arborist study on trees that were on the site. And all that was a study that we would take to the city as part of our zoning process. And those could cost tens of thousands of dollars. And I see all the work that we're doing for that small fee. That's crazy. So once the project's gone to market, often we'll be consulted. I say to my clients, you'll need 15 minutes of my time every 6 months.
Right.
Like you said, on the metering, on the EV, waste management, parcel management.
So they may ask you questions along the way.
Yeah, so now they have a trusted advisor that they can go out to for any operational questions. But yeah, really we get involved about 2 to 3 months before occupancy of the site. So that's when we may revisit the budget, look at costs that have changed.
Of course.
If there's any permitted inflation increases that can be added to the budget.
Apply that to the budget.
We'll also look at doing a homeowner information session if the client likes, where we do we have a presentation that we provide to all of the prospective owners, and as well they may not be intending on moving in, so we do gear the presentation as well to owners who are looking at leasing out their unit.
I think that's a good idea. I think do you go over some of the aspects of what to expect when you're coming into a sort of construction zone?
Yeah, the intent is to manage expectations and to prepare these people for moving into a construction site.
Do you do a slideshow?
Oh yeah, we'll do
you have pictures?
So some clients, I had a really good meet and greet earlier this year, and it's the first time it's happened where the president of the company stood on the roof of the building, and actually because it was a remote meet and greet, and they actually had their phone and they were broadcasting live from the roof. I think it was raining, so it kind of took away a little bit of the effect, but they wanted to show all the green space around and the view from the rooftop, and you could actually see the state of construction, and it was really it added a great flair. We have a lot of clients that will include pictures of what the current construction looks like, but as we're at that time, they're just getting ready for PDI, so most people will be going out to the site and they will be able to see while doing their PDI what the site looks like. But we are trying to prepare that in most cases they're not moving into the sales office. It is still a construction site, and the landscaping may not be ready. There may not be wallpaper. There may not be carpets. The elevator cabs have still got the hoarding on them to protect them while it's under construction.
We usually keep it in till the end.
And I tell people that's deliberate. It's not that they're moving you in when they're not ready. It's they want to protect your investment and take it off at the very end, so they're turning over a brand new building.
So that's so the occupancy stage and the communications with the property manager and the homeowners and your service staff and PDI staff. It's such an important process to begin early enough, because at times I see a lot of the developers out there, they're just not doing it. They're just not thinking of that. Some don't. I'm not saying everybody doesn't. Obviously, the more experienced developer may do that, but they're not aware of that importance of that communication. They're not aware, of all the things that can go wrong during that stage, that critical period. Yes.
Yeah.
You took the words right out of my mouth. So it's very critical that, people get the purchasers are informed what's going to happen, not just in their suite, but for the common area of the building that we're under construction. It's important, especially if it's a 50, 60, 70 story tower building, right?
Mm-hmm. So and it's going to take a while. Like interim occupancy is it is somewhat a concept that's reasonably unique to Ontario. We had clients from BC that came over and they would have buildings that would sit empty because they didn't feel comfortable about moving people into a construction site, because that's not what they did in BC. And at my previous company, where they had offices across North America, they were like, "What do you mean they're moving people in before it's registered? What do you mean you have to do occupancy before title transfer?" They just couldn't believe that concept. And then I always remember when they did the Tarion review with Justice Cunningham. They kept talking about a performance audit, and there was flaws in the Tarion process. And I think we sort of said, "Have you actually seen a performance audit? Have you actually seen?" So they would come on a tour of the building, and it's like, "Oh, now I see what people don't like being moved into a construction site." So it is just managing expectations. We do have a housing shortage, so I am a fan of interim occupancy. I think it does significantly reduce the purchase price to the purchaser, because if you didn't have occupancy, all of those costs that the developer would be incurring would then now just need to be added to your purchase price. Yeah. And that amount could be significant, and you're still got to pay for somewhere to live, or you wouldn't have a tenant in, assuming you have permission to lease your suite, to help offset some of those costs. So it's...
Yeah, and you're always going to have people that will complain during that process, and it's normal. And but at the end of the day, you have to be organized. You have to be aware. You have to have all your systems in place. You have to be aware of, as a construction manager, we have to put the fire alarm on test.
Yep.
During the day,
and it will go off periodically. Yeah, there's a lot of dust and construction noise, and so one thing.
It's trades that are unaware that you have to cover the device, or if you're working in a specific area, we have to cover the devices in a specific work zone. So that could be dust. It could be,
hot works is obviously
that could cause it.
Yeah, and look, we've seen definitely an extra layer of complexity with sprinklers now being added inside suites. That certainly, does add to some of the water leaks that we see.
Leaks are terrible. Leaks are terrible.
But one thing I do want to mention, one of the biggest challenges we have at interim occupancy is it becomes evident that buyers, unfortunately, have not taken advantage of the consumer protection legislation that's made available to them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm flabbergasted at the number of purchasers that will spend $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 on a condominium unit and will not take their documents to the lawyer during the 10-day cooling off period for a comprehensive review. Because they don't know about interim occupancy. They didn't know that they were required to move in. They didn't know that they had to pay an occupancy fee. None of this was explained to them when they purchased. And whether or not maybe they only asked a lawyer to review the agreement of purchase and sale to help cap the adjustments. But my recommendation for anyone that's buying a condominium is, look, budget $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 as part of your purchase price. It's no different than buying a Carfax when you're buying a car. Like, you want to make sure that you know everything about the car before you buy it. Why wouldn't you allot that same sort of money?
This is excellent advice, really. You're absolutely right. Take the time, go to a lawyer, have them review everything in that 10-day cooling off period.
Because it's so vital.
It is.
And make sure you take it to the right lawyer as well. There's a difference between a real estate lawyer and a condominium lawyer. A condominium lawyer will know more what to look for.
And you're reading status. Well, eventually, if you do resale, you're reading status certificates and
reserve fund studies,
and you're into all of that stuff. So let's get on to another subject because we want to make sure we keep this interesting conversation moving along.
Of course.
So now we're getting close to registration, and there's basically a lot of requirements that the developer has to satisfy. They're called turnover documents. They're part of the Condo Act. They're listed in the Condo Act. There's some documents that are required immediately on the day of the election for the board. And then 30 days after, some more documents are required, more detailed documents. So that's when the developer registrant resigns and the new board is voted on.
Yes.
And you're a big part of that process as well.
Yeah, so when you're gearing up for registration, your manager will be involved in finalizing the schedule that determines the percentage contribution to common expenses. So what does each unit pay in terms of their fees, and the percentage interest in the common elements. So what percentage they have there. And then also at that time, it's really critical that you have the manager orchestrates an insurance proposal. If the developer doesn't have a link to a broker that specializes in condominium insurance, it's very important that the manager get that up and running in advance, because
of course
the condominium insurance often is very different risks than a construction.
You have your builder's originally. You have your builder's risk
with an occupancy rider, and in order to cancel that, which can save the developer a lot of money, we need to make sure that we've got an insurance proposal that's ready to go, so we can bind that immediately on the day of registration. So from a management standpoint, that's the first thing we need to do as a manager once the condominium registers. Then we obviously need to register the condominium with the newly, it's not that new, it came in 2017, but the Condominium Authority of Ontario. So now all board members and all condominiums do need to be registered with the CAO.
Yes, that's right.
And then we work towards final closing. So that's finalizing the budget. That's finalizing the bylaws. Sometimes we just need to double check what the year end is for the condominium. Make sure that that's consistent with CRA requirements of not having a year end that's more than 53 weeks. Some little tiny things that can go really wrong if they're not taken care of initially. And then because they need to register the bylaws prior to closings, because they need to own all of the units before doing that. So once the registration occurs, the first push is towards closing units, making sure we have all the documents, making sure we have the final budget. And then once the closing's taken place, we then get ready for the turnover meeting. So that's where, once the developer has closed on 50% plus one of the units,
that's right.
That's what triggers the turnover meeting. So not only are they turning over control, so the declarant board that's elected by the owners, which is, as a developer, you will own all the units immediately, because for listeners that may not be aware, when you register a condominium, you're taking one piece of land and you're turning it into hundreds of units that all have their own individual title. So someone who's buying in a high-rise building will often get title to their unit, a parking unit, and a locker unit, which are three separately deeded pieces of property that come together. So once they've transferred more than 50% plus one of the residential dwellings, they've lost control, and a turnover meeting needs to be called within 21 days and then held within 21 days. And so at that meeting, yes, they're turning over control, so those board members resign, and the purpose of that meeting is to elect new homeowners who will form the board of directors. And they're also turning over all the documents to the condominium. So all of the registered documents, in some cases there's, site plan agreements, there's other, if there's records of site condition, there's a whole range of different documents that are turned over. And then from the date of the turnover, there's another 45 days that clients have where they can turn over the as-built drawings. And it's really important that they're stamped as-built, just because if there's been any changes to the drawings, they need to be captured, because the condominium needs those, in order to rebuild the building as part of the reserve fund, and also when they're undertaking the performance audit.
Yep.
They need those drawings to make sure, essentially, it was built the way it was intended.
So there's a lot of developers that try to get on the board, get elected on the board. They vote for themselves to get a seat on the board of directors. I always say it's not a good idea. Do you agree?
I would say that I would disagree with that comment. I think in the past maybe that may have been an approach, but I would see very rarely developers getting on the board unless they own a unit in the project. It can be perceived a little bit as a conflict, but I would say in the last 10 or so years, we've seen a significant reduction in the number of board members that are affiliated with the declarant.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a good idea, right?
It's a good idea not to be on the board. I think as a developer, your business is providing the promises that you made to your purchasers and standing by that product and working together collectively with the board to resolve any outstanding issues.
Well, at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do at the end of the day, because, here you have this process that's supposed to happen, and it's almost like a democratic process at the end of the day. It is a democratic process.
And when you said earlier on the board about boards that function well, the word we use is aligned. Are the board aligned together and willing to work together? Because the best performance audits that our office have been involved in is where the builder wants to get out of the project. The board wants to get the builder out of the project. So why don't we work together to achieve that goal?
Yes, of course.
Let's work together to get all the outstanding items done. It's not an emotional process. It's black and white. It's getting the right engineers, getting the right people in place, and making sure that you're collectively making progress. A, on the developer, they're getting any deficiencies taken care of, and B, on the condo side, they're acknowledging that those deficiencies have been taken care of. So it's a two-way street, and it can work very well.
Now, I've been involved in a lot of performance audits. They can be very onerous. They can be...
They're all time-consuming. They're all onerous. I don't know any that are not.
And I think it's good to hire a good performance audit engineer.
Yes.
Definitely. Someone who really pays attention to the important matters and not bring up frivolous issues or things that are, more BS.
Yeah, it's not BS. It's
there's a lot of engineers out there who basically put a lot of items in there that everybody knows should not be in there.
Yes.
And they put them in there anyways as a way of, it's like they're setting up
for padding the book.
They're padding the book, but they're also setting up for some kind of a negotiation. They know that there's, I can't bring in a specific example, but we've seen that a lot. I think they have to document well, and I agree with that. But at the end of the day, they have to be reasonable too, because you're never going to get through this if you're sitting across the table with someone who doesn't want to work together and get something done.
Yeah, some of the issues that I see that are flawed with the process is that you start the performance 6 months after registration, and you submit it on the 11th month after registration, and you do an addendum on the 12th month after registration. You're in construction. You're building this building. How many guys do you have on site 12 months after the condo's registered? None. So what a lot of our clients, we've been encouraging a lot of our clients to do a pre-performance audit.
Yeah, why don't we agree
and that's something too. I know that you guys do as well, because that way you can identify you get a third party to come in, or you get the Builder Bulletin 19 consultant, say, hey, can you do a Builder Bulletin 49 technical audit for us? We'll spend the $20,000-$30,000, get that done now, and I can actually get our trades to fix it while they're still on site and while I haven't finished paying them, or I haven't released any of the holdbacks, because I know the Construction Liens Act has changed in order to get people paid faster. So it is becoming more difficult and more challenging to get the trades back. So I have seen a massive trend of less payments being made more clients want to do the right thing. They want to make the building whole. Like let's if there's deficiencies, let's fix it. The money should only be used for items that you disagree on. I wouldn't have been able to register the building as a builder unless this passed code. You're saying it doesn't pass code. We're at an impasse.
Yeah.
So, how do we resolve this?
Yes, of course.
And
I mean,
as a gesture of
sometimes
goodwill, sometimes they'll put money forward rather than going to a conciliation.
Yeah, we generally stay away from the money negotiation till the end.
Yep.
The best strategy is always just keep working at it, keep getting the deficiencies resolved, have meetings about things that you may not be able to agree with, and get a resolution.
Yeah. And I can't stress enough, using a management company that has experience. It doesn't need to be Melbourne. Someone that's got experience in doing startup is very different than a condominium management company that specializes in managing well-oiled machines.
Yes,
because there's a lot of communication. Like the manager needs to constantly be doing inspections of the building, bringing any deficiencies to light to the developer, because there's nothing worse than when you bring something. It's like, you guys have been here for a year. Why didn't you tell me that earlier? I could have got that fixed straight away.
So that's, So I think that's a very important process that people need to be aware of. And that's why they're going to be listening to the show and hearing about it from the expert in the man himself, Julian McNabb. So a couple of other things. So we talked a lot about the process. So now we're registered and eventually we're going to do a final negotiation with the board. But now you've got to manage the building and, tell us a little bit about couple of questions here. Your philosophy about running a condo. Give us a typical idea of what it's like to be in a typical board. What kind of business is discussed at a board meeting? And you also hold an AGM once a year. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like the tidbit or the summarized version of what happens afterwards. But there's a lot of things I'm sure you're involved in. And why don't we start with that? Because there's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah, so to address the first question, so as managers, I like to say we manage the building. We like the decisions that we make are on the best interest of the building. So not the builder, not the developer, not the board, not the residents, but the building. Because if you always take that mindset, because board members will come and go, the builder's going to leave, residents will move in and move out. So the decisions need to be, in order to maintain values of the building, to make sure the building operates and functions as it's supposed to, the decisions need to be made in the best interest of the building.
Yes,
so if all of a sudden we need monthly maintenance on our mechanical system, but the board really wants to help everybody out and lower the costs and make it more reasonable, we'll do every 2 months. That's in the best interest of the residents because they're going to get a lower maintenance fee, and it's better for the board because we've satisfied what the board's asking for, but it's not in the best interest of the building.
Yes.
So that's first and foremost. Secondly, at the same time, while we're managing a building, we're really managing a community. It's about expectations. It's about quality of life. People ask, what's your vision? My vision is, look, if we're taking care of your community, it's going to be more enjoyable to live in than perhaps someone else's. How do we do that? Look, it is communication. Unfortunately, because we do specialize in new construction, it's a lot of people that may have never lived in a new building. They don't understand that we didn't build it, and there are going to be some issues that take a little longer to resolve. There's nothing worse when you've got a brand new building in the middle of summer where 80% of the building has perfect air conditioning and 20% have none.
Yes.
And it's not a building-wide function. It's not something that we don't manage suites. We don't manage inside the suite. So everyone's individual HVAC system is their actual responsibility to repair and maintain. While there are warranties in place that's covered, it's outside of our jurisdiction. So if we've done our due diligence on the central plant and there's nothing wrong and it's working, it's functioning correctly, that's where it becomes difficult. And that's where the Google reviews go crazy because the manager didn't fix my air conditioning when in fact I actually don't have any power to do that.
Right.
Same with, in some instances, hot water. Sometimes people have a cartridge that goes in their unit. We have hot water everywhere else in the building, but not in their particular suite. It's a unit owner responsibility, and that's where it can be a little challenging.
It's a tough situation.
So when I talk about community, remember we're managing people's homes, and this goes back to my earlier comment that I made about if a manager has lived in a multi-residential dwelling, sometimes their approach to managing is a little different. So for me, it stems down from the culture. So it's the way the leaders of our company disseminate information down to our managers and how they actually manage the community. So I'm a big fan of saying, let's not use the words "do not" in someone's home. If I had you over for dinner, I'd say, Nick, do not wear your shoes in my house. It's like, hey, if you wouldn't mind taking them off before you come in.
I'm going to wear my shoes.
Yeah, I know. But that's okay. That's a whole different story that I had.
We could do an episode about that.
That's a very Canadian thing, taking shoes off, because I was at
we do. We obviously have to respect every house you go into.
I grew up.
I like saying jokes, though.
I grew up saying, you can step on something that might kill you, so you got to wear your shoes. Like, put your shoes on. Why are you not wearing your shoes? So it's a different time.
It's an Aussie thing.
So now, just give us a quick summary, because we're running out of time here.
So
but in terms of the daily business, not the daily business. We know there's daily business, but you have, when you're on a board of directors, you're going to have your monthly board meetings.
Yeah, some are monthly, some are quarterly, some are once a year. Like, we manage some small communities where it doesn't make sense.
We did it monthly.
If you're in a large building, it's going to be monthly. Your financial statements are going to be monthly. And again, so it's communication. It's having that relationship with your board where they can trust you.
You're running the board meetings, or a property manager is running the board meetings.
So we have our property
agenda.
Yeah, we have our property managers running, and with a management report that we try to send out in advance, so that at least the board have an idea of what's happening. Our managers are assisted by our regional directors, and then we have a vice president of property management that also assists with the regionals. Again, it's all sending down the message. It's sending down support. So the biggest thing in order to deliver the management services that need to be provided in an environment where we have licensed managers and we have a shortage of managers, it's about providing a really supportive environment for managers to work. So the big part from culture for me is making sure that every single manager on our team, every single accountant, every single administrator feels comfortable asking for help or asking for a question, because there's so much to learn in this industry. Yes. So, and if they're armed with it, if they feel comfortable where they can ask someone and not be ridiculed for asking the wrong question, it makes a difference. And that way, when they're actually having the board meetings, they feel more comfortable. Because again, we're now dealing with board members that may never been aboard before, don't understand what the role is. Some board members want to become managers. Yeah. I'll admit, when I joined the board, I thought that was what my role was. No, it's more of an advisory committee. Like, we know landscaping. We went out and we got 3 tenders and we provided the scope of work. We recommend this one, but we need your approval to proceed with that. And that's sort of the way it's typically done in Ontario. Some other states do it differently, where it's more facility management, where you go out and just take care of everything.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. I think we do it right here, and
it's more transparent. I think that's important.
Do you have a lot of tough boards, or
yeah, we do. And I have to say, some of the boards that we have that are tough are refreshing. I was chatting with my VP of operations, and she said, yeah, this board was asking some tough questions, but they were great, because it made me second guess, are we doing the right thing? And we are. And it was a good question to ask. And again, it's their condominium. It's their home. We are the agent. We are the licensed manager that's tasked with taking care of their home. So they have the right to be tough.
They have the right to ask any question they want.
Yeah.
So now, just to end things off, what is new and exciting in the condo management world? What's innovative? What can you discuss and bring to the table here today? And I have one final question at the end.
Okay. Managers have had a really tough time with the pandemic. I will say the biggest change that we've seen in condominium management over the last 5 years is significantly higher occupancy of the buildings that we manage. And the reason for that is, obviously, it's becoming more expensive to rent in Toronto, and it's becoming more expensive to purchase in Toronto. And that's spread to the GTA, it's spread to Oakville, it's spread to Burlington. So in order to accommodate a higher cost, you need more people living there. Mm-hmm. So our managers have been dealing with, buildings that have shortened lifespans of certain equipment, or the carpet cleaning needs cleaning more, the garage needs cleaning more. There's a lot more traffic, so there's a lot more efforts there. So where we are trying to take a load off, the best innovations that came out of the pandemic, obviously the virtual meetings have been phenomenal. We now have a much higher attendance of AGM, turnover meetings, because they can be done virtually. Our managers can do a lot more meetings, even with a homeowner. You want to schedule a meeting, we can do it now, 15 minutes face-to-face, and we can talk about it. So having that technology, and we're a big proponent. We provide all of our staff with a full Microsoft suite, full laptop, so that they have the tools at their disposal to be able to utilize that technology. We're also seeing a lot more technology in buildings. Companies like One Valet are constantly working with our team, saying, what can we improve? How can we make it easier to live? Some of the parcel management solutions that we've seen, where it's actually just a parcel room. It doesn't cost a huge amount of money. It's just a room with an interphone on it that the courier can quickly scan the package, put it in, and
that's
gone.
A company called Snail. I think they do.
No, this is One Valley. Snail is a locker system,
Yeah,
so we do
locker
have the
system.
lockers as well.
Yeah.
What we like about the One Valet system is that it integrates with the access control system. So in order for you to come into the building, you have to register your information to be able to come in and out. With the Snaily system, if you haven't registered your information, sometimes the parcels aren't always left there, or they're left on the room. They don't necessarily put them inside the locker because it takes a little bit of time for the couriers. But anyway, both of those are great examples of new technology.
One Valet, I've never heard of it, but I'm going to check it out.
You'll check it out and you'll say, okay, that was worthwhile for this interview just to see something cool in terms of they've integrated a building-wide communication platform with technology. So, you book a party room, all of a sudden you can facilitate the payment if there's a booking. Plus, I can now give my guests a QR code to come into the building to bypass the concierge.
Oh, very cool.
So all of a sudden, it's like this is a lot more
takes a lot of work off. Creates a lot of more easier friendly systems.
Yeah, and so we're seeing a majority of the new projects today come with bulk internet as an amenity and the smart community as an amenity. So if you're for example an owner and you've leased out your suite, you have a lot bigger eye on what your tenant's able to do in terms of come in, come out, book rooms.
Beautiful.
And unit owners.
One Valet. So maybe they're going to sponsor me now, right?
I'm not sure. You'll have to chat with them, but they.
I was waiting for the pitch.
Waiting for the.
No, that's my fight. I blew it. So is Melbourne Property Management gonna? Final question, and it's gonna. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Oh, you gotta have a hot question.
Are you gonna sponsor Building Toronto's Skyline, the podcast? Will you do it?
I'm sure we can make that happen, Nick.
Definitely
the toughest question.
Well, listen, Julian, I gotta say, I'm a good judge of character. You're very knowledgeable. We hit it off right away, and I'm glad we reconnected on 60 on Broadway, which is coming soon. And phenomenal session, and so much. We've learned so much today, and I really appreciate you being a guest here on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me, and happy to be here.
Any final words to the audience?
No, I think it's important that people do listen to podcasts like this because, like I mentioned, information is key. People need to be better informed. This is the way of the future. Home ownership is becoming more difficult, so multi-residential condominium living is more socially accepted in Toronto. So definitely get the information that you need and reach out to different organizations that offer that information.
That's great. So I want to once again thank you. And Mike, anything you want to say?
I wanted to say thank you for listening to Building Toronto's Skyline, a podcast exploring the current state of Toronto's condominium industry, proudly brought to you by Melbourne Property Management and Fusion Corp Developments, Inc. Please share, like, and subscribe. See you again in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much.